What's up, guys?
Whew.
Nice
I
early
feel
morning
jacked
for you.
up.
Yeah. Nice early morning for you, Sam. We'll just
Yeah.
call that back.
Oh, it's great. It's
Yeah.
great. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah. Sam Kabert, right? Did I see your name on your emails and whatnot, but I don't know if it's like Kabert or it's got some kind of different
Kabert.
Kabert. Yeah. Yeah.
No, you got it's Kabert. It's
Kabert.
funny. I had a college professor that would call me Kabert, and that was like the first time in my life that I heard anyone pronounce it Kabert. And only in recent years, I'm 37 now, so that's a long time removed from college. But only in recent years has like people thought Kabert again.
That's really funny.
So, anyways, yeah.
Stephen Colbert.
Stephen Colbert. He might be the impetus for all
yeah,
that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Cool.
now Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, man, welcome. Sorry to keep you from your beach and breathwork time, which, by the way, you were telling us before we hit record. It sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah, that sounds pretty amazing right there. I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah.
I'm stoked to be here. Yeah, I mean, after I got into all this kind of work, I had to get out of Silicon Valley. It was a concrete jungle. It was too much. So I moved to the beach, and it's changed my life entirely. So got to take advantage of that,
I do know that. I have this alter ego that lives under my conscious brain that says, I could just move to a beach in like Costa Rica. I got a condo down there, and I'm like, it's literally a 5-minute walk to the beach. And I'm just like, why am I not there? Like, I feel like that should be where we're operating from. I could record from there. That's easy enough.
Oh man, I almost did it before I moved into my new clinic, and it was at the advice of my mentor, who said, "You'll love it for 3 months, and then I know you'll be getting arrested for lighting fires." And I think he was right.
Oh man, yeah, I do like that vibe though, man. I went to La Jolla recently, just passing through with our kids, and we went down to La Jolla Cove, and I was like, man, these people are just on like a Thursday. Like, this is just like their every day. It's awesome,
Yeah, it's funny. I'm from Northern California, just south of Silicon Valley, a town called Gilroy, and I went to school in Northern California,
Garlic
Chico. Yeah, exactly. That's us. But outside, after I graduated college, I moved down to San Diego. I was, 22 at the time. I remember getting a breakfast burrito, watching the surfers, calling up my parents, and I was just like, I don't understand why everyone doesn't live here.
Yeah,
like
totally.
that very similar experience you just mentioned.
Yeah, then I had to like look at the surfers in La Jolla Cove and be like, these guys are fucking batshit crazy. There's like jagged rocks the size of volcanoes. I'm like, these fuckers are nuts.
It's true.
Yeah. Gilroy, I'm actually from the Bay Area as well. I'm from a town called Vallejo. So.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
know Vallejo.
Yeah. So Gilroy, we used to hit up the garlic festival. Garlic ice cream is actually not as bad as it sounds.
I'd give it a go.
That's what I say.
Yeah. It's not terrible, right? I mean, it sounds fucked up. I'll be honest. It doesn't sound good.
Well, everyone asks about that, but for anyone listening that's like thinking cringe, like garlic ice cream, what? I mean, think about it this way. It's the Gilroy Garlic Festival, the garlic capital of the world.
Yeah.
And everything there is garlic. And really what it is a vanilla ice cream with minced garlic.
Yeah.
So it's, 100 degrees out a lot of times. So it's refreshing. You already have garlic.
Wait, is it fresh garlic?
It's like vanilla. I mean, it's been years since I had, but growing up, it was vanilla ice cream with like minced garlic in it,
I mean,
this show never goes where I think it's going to go.
Imagine every food that you could think of and then put garlic in it. And that's
as an Italian, I don't see a problem with any of that.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, healthy. I mean, garlic's good for you, man. Like it's got a lot of good health stuff.
Out,
yeah, it'll clean you up, right? So. All right, Sam, so you kind of hinted towards it, but let's get into like what got you here. Silicon Valley, what were you doing there and why'd you get out?
Yeah, I started a business my last year of college called Chico Feet. We did promotional products, long story, whatever, but moved back home to Silicon Valley where there's a lot of opportunity there. And it took me about 5 years, I would say, for the business to really take off. And then in the 5th or 6th year, I started a podcast that was back in 2017. It was called What Up Silicon Valley. We turned that into a media network. I was on the board of a few nonprofits, and then that led to being named Silicon Valley's 40 under 40 list. And I built my business up to a 7-figure business while working less than 4 hours a day. So very much like in that grind, like that hustle culture for sure. And once I hit all of these goals, I was also even named to my industry's rising stars. I went through this numbing depression And it was that rock bottom where it was just like, no other choice than to surrender. And I didn't even have the language to really say what surrender meant, but it was just like, what's going on here? And that's when a breathwork journey found me. Then from there, ayahuasca ceremony, and then I did a complete 180 on my life. That was 6 years ago. And I moved out of Silicon Valley. I started transition out of the business, and I just went super deep on like not just mental health, but emotional health. And here I am 6 years later. So that's kind of like the high level overview.
So isn't that crazy? You're not the first person we've talked to that has this kind of situation. Like you're sort of by all like traditional metrics, you're sort of top of the game, right? You're apex, you're operating at like the absolute pinnacle. And like you said, you're working less than 4 hours a day. It's a fucking dream job by most standards, right? But like it doesn't seem to be that way in the mental health arena for sure.
And did it feel like something was just missing? And we hear about like all these Silicon Valley people going into like, oh, I'm going to do an ayahuasca ceremony or doing something like breath work, and that's where they kind of, I guess, have that breakthrough. I mean, was yours like a holotropic breath work kind of thing? What did you do? What was the catalyst?
For sure. Yeah, very similar to holotropic breath work, transformational breath. So it's just a different style, but it's pretty much the same. A lot of people will categorize those type of breathwork journeys. I like to say a breathwork journey, to allude to those deep cathartic releases. A lot of people categorize it under like a rebirthing style, which rebirthing is a completely different style. So it's not really fair to call it rebirthing. Same thing with transformational breath. A lot of times someone hears about transformational breath and they'll be like, no, it's called holotropic. And it's like, no, that's a specific style that's trademarked, right? So it can be
I didn't know that was trademarked. Yeah.
That's Groff. That's Daniel Groff.
Holotropic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Transformational breath, I think I want to say Judy Kravitz. I don't know. I'm trained in somatic breath work and different yoga certs. There's so many different styles like I alluded to. But yeah, it was that rebirth type feeling. Like literally I was breathing for probably who knows what time is when you're breathing like that, because basically the prefrontal cortex shuts down. The scientific term is called transient hypofrontality.
Yeah.
And I remember coming back into my body, and my whole body was just vibrating. It was vibrating intense. And I literally thought I was having a seizure and I was going to die. Then like it was intense. Then I heard the instructors, it was one-on-one. I heard the instructor's voice, and he was just, I don't know, this was 6 years ago. He probably saying things like, just breathe, just breathe, whatever his cues were. And then that's when I had that actual moment of surrender. And I remember just the euphoria, the bliss, and just like letting it all wash over me. And then the trembles, the vibrating stopped, and just like coming back to my body. And for the first time in my life, after that experience, I had known what it felt like to feel light. Because you hear people say like, feel light, or I feel heavy or whatever. And I just had released so much from the tremoring, essentially the vibration, because that's like a gazelle getting chased in the wild, and it vibrates it out and we hold on to it. So anyways, that was the breathwork journey. A week later, I sat with ayahuasca with those same people to what you asked about, like all these Silicon Valley people that will do breath work or plant medicine, like why this is. I just think like there's different archetypes of people that get into like the healing work. And I think there's a lot of us that outsource our worth to success. Like Steve Weatherford is a great example. He was a kicker or punter for the New York Giants, won Super Bowl, and now he's a big podcaster. He's homies with Jesse Itzler and all those guys. But he talks about it too. Like after winning the Super Bowl, he felt so empty. And whatever the arena is that you're playing in, like when you outsource your success to, on a subconscious level, say to yourself, when I achieve ABC, I will feel XYZ, you're going to get to that place of, wow, why don't I feel different? Because you didn't realize you were saying that. It was happening on a subconscious level. And that's the archetype that I feel like myself and many others fall into.
Because I don't know a lot about breath work, and that's what was one of the reasons why I was really excited to have you on, because I'd love to learn about it. And it's funny, you're saying some stuff I really didn't know, which is like, this is a style, you use that term a couple of times. And both Tom and I have martial art backgrounds. And it's funny, you would normally talk about that sort of thing in a martial art capacity where you're like, all right, well, there's a style of this, there's a style of that.
Well,
I didn't realize
that to
breathwork
me
had
makes
the same
sense
thing.
though, Matt, where like you have so many different expressions of the same thing, right? And what fits that person, what kind of lights that person up. And I mean, God, which it was some religious prophet that said, there's a prophet for every person, basically.
Yeah,
Like there
yeah.
isn't one way of
Right.
doing this. And I feel like that's true, right? There's certain fundamental principles, right? But within that, how does somebody need to hear it? How does somebody need to experience it to get the best results? And I think that makes sense. I mean, most of my reading was in holotropic breathwork because I just thought Stan Groff was great. But seeing all these other things kind of develop is pretty interesting, and it shows that there is a real. And I love how you put this kind of this archetype of this achiever, right? Because Matt and I both have had the pleasure to work with a guy, Doug Brackman, who wrote a book called Driven. And it sounds like certainly you were that. You were looking for this, like, once I climb that final mountain, and then you get to the top of the mountain, you're like, oh shit, there's a higher one.
So Sam, are you sort of consistently trying new styles out and kind of weaving them in, or have you kind of like done that already? You kind of settled into something that you're working on and you kind of dig that groove?
That's a great question, Matt, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Tom, to address what you mentioned about the like peaking, in my TED talk, I said that exact same thing. I had peaked at my version of Mount Everest. So that's exactly like the analogy, like the way I think of it. And then Matt, to answer your question, I'm constantly learning, like probably like you guys. I feel like anyone listening right now that's listening to a podcast and yourselves as hosts, like we're all about like self-development, right?
Sure.
Or as I think about like
you want to talk
spiritual
about
and soul
archetypes.
development.
Yeah.
So, always learning. I feel like once we feel like we got there or we know it all, like you obviously don't, right? And that's like, that is the true imposter. That is the true imposter. So anyways, for myself, I'm a certified yoga instructor, breathwork instructor, master practitioner of NLP, MER, hypnosis. I do a lot of self-study on different types of breathwork. To talk about breathwork just briefly, and I'll try not to make this too long so we can have a conversation.
It is a show about breathwork. So
man, you run it. We kind of just ask you questions and keep it going.
Yeah.
That's my point. I don't want to like take over and like just do a master class. So I'll pause and just chime in anytime.
Yeah, well, when you come back and do the master class then one of these days, Sam.
For sure. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. So breathwork, let's start from the top. Like, I think that because breathwork is such a trending topic right now, there's so much confusion to what actually it is. Like we're talking about holotropic breathwork and these breathwork journeys that are like feeling like a rebirth. Then other people are like, wait, I thought breathwork was like going to a meditation or a yoga class and just like calming my anxiety and my nerves. Like, what is this? So I like to break breathwork into two separate categories. One being breathwork journeys, and that's what we talked about with like transformational breath, rebirthing, holotropic, and that's that deep cathartic release. It's almost like doing a psychedelic experience for healing,
but not quite like a Wim Hof level, like where it's or is that he? Does he?
I would say he's going in a slightly different direction. He's trying to change more physiology.
That's what I'm saying. Like it feels like. Is that kind of like a third category or a different thing altogether?
Yeah, so that gets confusing as well because most people, when they think about Wim Hof, they think about like his 10 or 11-minute YouTube video where it's like 3 rounds or maybe his app or self-paced, something like that. It is kind of like an in-between, and I'll get to that. I believe Wim does have like full-on breathwork journeys once you work with one of his instructors and they go deeper. But I'm not extremely well versed to speak on his specific style. That said, let's just think about breathwork journeys for now. That's like that trauma release, that deep rebirth, right? Then on the other side, we have breathwork exercises. And I think of breathwork exercises as anything to shift into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. So we can think about when you're feeling nerves, anxiety, all of these things. When we're talking about Wim Hof and circular connected breathing, which is the style of breathwork that's typically used in a breathwork journey, that I would categorize as a breathwork exercise.
I got
And here's why. Yeah. So
no, that makes sense.
I think it's a detriment to the understanding of how the nervous system works and how we look at our emotional health to be like, oh, when you're feeling anxiety, do some box breathing, do some cyclic sigh, do something so you don't have to feel that, because that's compartmentalizing. And that's actually doing us a disservice because we're not actually processing what comes up. Here's what's super fascinating. Science teaches us that our body has a 90-second physiological response when we experience an emotion. There was Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, who had a TED Talk back in 2008. She was named to Time's top 100 influential people as a result of that TED Talk. It literally blew up the TED brand, and she brought out a brain on stage with the spinal cord. She's a neuroanatomist, and she introduced the concept of the 90-second rule. And the 90-second rule is what I just mentioned. Our body has a 90-second physiological response when we experience an emotion, meaning that if we don't allow ourselves to feel that emotion, then it's going to get stuck and stored in the body. So the way most people are utilizing breathwork exercises is actually a disassociation. It's just a Band-Aid, right?
Oh, wow.
So when we utilize something like Wim Hof, a style of circular connected breathing, even his 10-minute or 11-minute video on YouTube, we're actually allowing ourselves to feel that emotion, because circular connected breathing shifts us into the sympathetic nervous system. And most people know that as fight or flight. But I would like to introduce the concept of that being an alert state or high energy state versus fight or flight, because of the stigma of fight or flight. Oh, why would we want to get into fight or flight? Well, maybe we're trying to get off coffee, and I don't do this every morning, but a lot of times when I do my breath work in bed to shift into sympathetic nervous system, before or right after I get out of bed and before I have coffee, I'm doing pull-ups. Why?
Yeah.
Because I just gave myself a natural boost of energy.
Sure.
And it works the same way in processing our emotions. It brings up those emotions to the surface so that we can feel them and move through them. So that's like foundational.
That's actually pretty wild, but also super intuitive. I think now that you're saying that, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, how come I didn't get
how
there?
Your body works.
Yeah. That is fascinating. So it's funny that you said box breathing, because I was going to say the same thing. Anybody who's got like a yoga class under their belt, like, is familiar
knows 4-4-4.
Knows 4-4-4. Yeah, right. Like, and it is interesting. I've never really pulled it apart though. Like you were saying, like as an anesthetic versus like allowing you to sort of lean into whatever comes up during that, because you're right. I think we're using it to tamp down like I'm doing box breathing to sort of bring down my heart rate, bring down my, like I'm not necessarily doing it to release anything, right?
Yeah, and this is an important distinction, right? Like if it's before podcasts, before speaking on stage, before presenting something in your office, before a hard conversation with a loved one, anything like that, that's going to be great. But say you're having something come up and it's not like around like being with someone else and having those nerves, but you're really feeling dense, heavy energy, like maybe you're going through grief or whatever it might be. When you're utilizing box breathing in those situations, it's a Band-Aid. However, like I just mentioned, if you're like me and you're a speaker, right, or you're just presenting to a team or a pitch or whatever it is, or maybe you're a salesperson and you're just like dialing, like smile and dial the whole thing, right? And you just got off a tough conversation with someone saying no to you. Sure, utilize box breathing to do the next one. But when those really deep and intense emotions are coming up, that's when I would say lean into circular connected breathing to actually feel them and move through them.
And it was interesting. I've never done holotropic, but we did a shamanic breathing. And again, I think these words are all kind of very much overlaid. Like I feel like I don't know how much different, but I've had a lot of experience with psychedelics, and I was every bit in that same space doing shamanic breathing than I was. And it was shocking to me that I could transition into that state without chemical assistance or anything. I was just literally laying on wild. And when I guess when I peel that back, I'm like, oh, that was cool, but I wish I had like more control over it at the, you know what I mean? Like, I'd love to like go back and kind of learn what was happening that day and try to figure out how to like be more intentional with it. I was just sort of like a participant in a seminar almost, right? Like, does that make sense? Like, I wasn't really...
well, I'm here to teach you.
yeah, right. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was sort of like, oh, we're doing this thing today. Lay down and listen to this techno music while we bring you into a trance. Yeah, you know.
Totally. Yeah. So we have DMT in our bodies, as you guys might know, or some of the listeners, and doing these deep breathwork releases like that, shamanic journey, holotropic, et cetera, we're actually utilizing our breath to release the DMT. And the DMT is the molecule that gives the quote unquote hallucinogenic trip. So when we're doing a breathwork, so that's what's happening. And the way we can access there is we're turning off the prefrontal cortex. Again, it's called transient hypofrontality. Transient meaning temporary. Hypo is the opposite of hyper. So if hyper is more normal, hypo is less than normal. And frontality refers to the prefrontal cortex. So we're temporarily shutting off the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is the analytical, logical mind. So this is how we're able to bypass our conscious mind into the subconscious, which is the feeling. It's the language of the feelings, and it's getting into our body. So we don't have that chatter going on. And that's what allows us to have those different type of ethereal experiences and release the DMT.
And that's, I'm not a neuroscientist, and I always get these areas of the brain jacked up in my brain. But isn't that also like judgment and like stuff like that there? So like you kind of like, if you could tamp that down, then you could actually like feel what it is. I mean, I remember feeling my fingernails in that breathing. Like, I mean, I've never known the existence of my fingernails. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just sort of like one of those weird things that came out of that. I'm like, dude, I felt my fingernails. That's bizarre. Like, but like, I think it's because nothing else was happening. Like, I was just into feeling.
Oh man, that's
everything.
like sensory deprivation chambers. I remember seeing the little glowing circle that I sometimes see when I'm meditating and going, oh, that's cool. I wonder what it would look like with my eyes open. And then went to open my eyes, realized my eyes were open.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's like, well, that's freaking weird. And then, you know, I was like, oh, what happens if I shut them? And then I heard my eyelashes touch. Weirdest sensation.
So Sam, when you're doing like a daily thing, I mean, you're obviously deep into this, right? Like, so when what would you say the biggest difference between somebody who would do this like daily as sort of a health prophylactic or as a sort of like health continuation versus somebody who needs to approach it more as a therapeutic situation? Like, is there sort of a
dosage?
Yeah. Is there like a way to think of this differently? You know?
I love that question. Yeah. So basically the breathwork journeys, again, that's that deep trauma release. You know, that's something that I would encourage everyone to experience once in their life. And as a good rule of thumb, like if you're into doing this type of work, once a year is a great check-in, you know, whether it's to end the year, to start the year, whatever. Once a quarter is great as well. Once a month is starting to be like, okay, you don't need to have this deep cathartic release every single month. However, if you're just beginning your journey of really diving into this stuff, you might be doing this breathwork journey once a week or even more frequent. For me, back in 2019, I think I'd probably had 20 breathwork journeys in a matter of like 4 months or something.
Wow.
And, you know, I remember doing an ayahuasca ceremony and the facilitator being like, oh, you're the deep diver, going back for another
that guy.
Yeah, right. And so it just depends who you are and how much you have to move through and how dedicated you are, right? If you're really going through it and you're really having a hard time, because specifically with psychedelics, like if you just did Bufo, the toad medicine, or even ayahuasca, and you're having a very challenging integration, as many people are, a great way to integrate that experience is more breathwork journeys.
Sure.
Now, having said that, I think we're painting the picture now of like, that's not something we're doing doing every day or all the time. Maybe it's once a year. So on a daily basis, if you can just first thing in the morning, implement a breathwork practice, that is going to be so good because you're regulating your nervous system. You're setting an intention for the day, and your nervous system is starting to learn how to breathe in a way that actually serves you. Not only that, like if you're working out a lot and you're getting sore, things like that, it can help move the blood flow so you get less sore, gives you natural energy in the morning. For me, I typically wake up first thing in the morning. I would say about 90% of the time, I'll do breath work in bed, probably about 10 to 20 minutes. I typically will do Wim Hof's 11-minute one, or I have a few that I've recorded that I like doing. And sometimes I don't like hearing myself. I'm just like, I don't want to do my own. So I know I like Wim Hof's. So I'll do something like that,
makes
you
sense.
know? Yeah, it makes sense. But also like, I love doing my own because it's my style that I really like. And to your point earlier, like I mix in root lock breathing from the yogis, which is similar to what Dr. Joe teaches, along with circular connected breathing and all these different things, and a specific music like binaural beats that helps with the brain waves. So I really geek out on all that type of stuff. But if you can implement, just 3 deep breaths with first thing when you wake up and ask yourself, how do I feel right now? And what do I want out of today? That is a great place to start because you can build from there.
Yeah, sure. And it's funny, I kind of accidentally find my routines. Like I generally don't. I like, there's a lot of wisdom in just finding your own thing. And that's what I've always liked about like Jeet Kune Do with Bruce Lee. And like, he just has like 30 different martial arts that came together as one. Cause he's like,
I
for
think
me, this works, like
I think you're touching on something, and I hear Sam saying it too. You deep dive on one thing, right? You get those core principles down, and then you can look around. And I feel like Jeet Kune Do, yeah, Bruce Lee came up with that, but Yip Man was his first teacher. Like how are you going to go wrong with like the best Wing Chun practitioner ever?
Right. Yeah. But that's my point, right? Like, it's like, you can grab these things. Like Tom and I geek out with this Muse headband all the time. I found out my meditation scores goes through the roof when I stretch and connect my breath to my stretching. And that I did by accident. Like all of a sudden, like I was wearing my thing and I had like a tightness from a run. So I was like, all right, while I'm sitting here meditating, I'm just going to stretch.
Hit that too.
Like hit this like hamstring thing. And I just did one of those, like breathe in while my back went up. And I just did a long exhale and just leaned down and touched my toes. And all of a sudden birds were fucking flying out of my phone. Like it was like, just, I'm like, what the hell was that? Like I just like all of a sudden, and now I can almost tell you what my Muse score is going to be based on what I'm doing and how diligent I am, because it does fall apart real quick. If I'm not connecting every breath to every movement, it does fall apart very quickly.
I feel like we should be getting free muses every time we mention them, man.
I was just thinking that.
We do talk about that. I don't think
there's an episode that like, by the way, I've got my new one.
So if you guys love Muse, have you heard of Neurovisor?
Yeah, I have. Now, I will tell you, I'm playing with maybe the cheaper, dumber version, which is an iPhone app, Luminate.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And basically, you take your phone and you turn the camera facing you, and it'll flash lights. So you do it in a dark room, but it's the same. This what do they call it? Hypnagogic light, I believe, is the word.
I don't know that one, but that sounds like a thing.
It looks really cool. It's just I haven't.
It's so awesome.
I haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet.
It's worth it. That's a good one.
What's it called again?
Neurovisor. It's Neuro Neuro. For the listeners though, VIZR.
Yeah. I will play with that after the show.
It's basically like a headset. You put it on, and they have all these different ways that you can activate different brainwave states. Like say you have trouble sleeping, but for a lot of people, it's really good because it opens the pineal gland, the third eye. There's all these flashing lights, and it's a trip. but it's definitely rewiring the neural pathways in the brain.
And it's funny, like, I don't know where one thing leaves off and another thing picks up anymore. Like I'm, just like you, I'm involved with a million different things, right? Like so I'm always doing something, whether it's microdosing or, strategic cannabis using or trying out some, fucking neurovisor or whatever, like I'm always doing something. Like there's never like a stagnation, but I feel good generally, right? Like, so I'm like, all right, well, the whole point is that I feel good. I can function in the world proficiently. I don't feel like I'm going backwards. And I feel like as long as I can keep doing that, I'm cool. But like the breath work stuff is fascinating to me because it's the one thing out of a lot of these things that doesn't need to change with age, right? Like you don't have to do, like, I'm not going to be squatting 400 pounds when I'm 90. Like that doesn't feel like a likely scenario. Like, right? Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
But like you could certainly be breathing to a 200. Like you don't right? Like it doesn't matter how old you are, and you can do a lot of that stuff, I would think. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong. You're the breath dude.
No, you're right. Yeah, I mean, with breath work, it's obviously free. The
And
only
it's free.
the only barrier is learning. And I love the discussion we're having here around like figuring things out, how it makes you feel, then tweaking it to make it more not accessible, but noticing what you need in the current moment, right? Because sometimes I'll be doing breath work and I'm like, no, that's not what I need right now. And we only learn by experimenting,
Sure.
right? So just trying all these different styles, and then breath work, it's so accessible. The biggest barrier is just learning and experimenting, but that's not a big barrier unless you create it as a barrier.
And you couldn't, I mean, you don't need to be told how many people create that as a barrier, as their default
Right.
mode, right? They're like, oh, I can't do that. Why? Well, it's for, hippies. You're like, or it sounds woo woo. I'm like, okay. But I mean,
You're like, it's actually for Navy SEALs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You certainly can.
By
do
the way,
it.
every military branch does it, and the government studied it.
Yeah. No, but it's like, yeah, you certainly can do it. You just aren't. Like that's the only answer.
And it's a mindset. Yeah, for sure.
And the education part, though, listen, I have to give credit to some of those people where credit is due. The education part can be really daunting. I mean, Tom and I and Sam, sounds definitely you're in the same camp. Like we sit in a place of extreme privilege when it comes to the education. Like we've put ourselves in intentional situations where the knowledge is just flowing like wine all the time, right? Like it never stops. If you talk to some people I know who are, in a scarcity mindset, raising kids in a stressful work environment, dual income families, everyone's eating McDonald's on the way home. Like you don't necessarily have access to that information. And these aren't bad, uneducated people. These are smart, high functioning humans that are just not in a place where they could even understand what to look for, let alone how to look for it, let alone how to practice it, let alone. I mean, Sam, it seems like you were that human for actually. So I don't be preaching to the choir.
Yeah, and I think if you're in enough pain, you're gonna figure it out. It's kind of like when your life is imploding. This one I experienced a couple of years ago. My life totally imploded. I thought I was going one way, it just imploded in my face, and it became so much easier to lean into my practices, like that everyday stress or just kind of feeling maybe something's off, but there's not something huge in front of you. Like that can be very challenging to make change. But when you are feeling like your life implode or you're at rock bottom, you're numb, any of those things, like at least for me, that makes it so much easier because I have no other choice. But if you don't really know what's going on, but you just feel like those everyday pressures, a lot of times you're not motivated enough to make that change.
But you know what? I do know about all these changes, and even I will look up some days and it'll be like Wednesday and I'm like, how the fuck did Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday come and go? And I've actually done nothing expansive. I've just been tamping down whack-a-moles, and like it's very easy to fall into that.
I think
right?
that is part of the modern human condition. We have so much going on constantly. That like, and maybe breath work and meditation and qigong and these practices are to like the one tool we have to actually combat that. But you got to catch yourself, like you said. Hey, I woke up and it was it was Monday morning. I went to bed and now it's Friday. To sort of to work that back in, to catch yourself in that moment is really, I think, what we got to do.
Yeah, it just takes 2 minutes, right? Going back to the 90-second rule. Like if you just take a couple minutes in bed or at some point in your day, like after dropping off the kids, if you have kids and between a call, whatever it is, like just find that 2 minutes at some pocket in your day. You're going to notice how good that feels and you're going to want to do it more often. Then you're going to find more 2 minutes. Maybe you won't have 20 minutes to do, a meditation session or a deep breathwork exercise, but find those little pockets. And here's a
Right.
ninja tip that people love. So you guys know about the cyclic sigh?
No.
Hmm?
So Dr. Andrew Huberman, obviously the podcaster,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
runs
yeah.
Stanford's lab. And a few years ago, the Stanford lab, led by Huberman, did a study to discover what's going to be the most effective technique to alleviate stress and anxiety, not only in the moment, but have lasting impact throughout the day. So they studied the different styles of breath work compared to different styles of meditation. And what they found is that doing the cyclic sigh is more effective than anything else to reduce stress and anxiety in real time and have lasting impact throughout the day.
Oh,
Now
did you
we've
say sigh as in like a
I thought you meant the
sigh.
Greek letter.
Yeah, I was yeah,
Oh, well, this is good for your
I actually
listeners.
read that from Huberman.
Yeah, so obviously, I've explored a lot of different types of breath work.
Mhm.
I think that box breathing can be very confusing for someone that's doing it for the first time.
Sure.
Mhm.
Alternate nostril breathing is absolutely confusing if you're new to it,
Yeah.
right?
Very, and you look like ridiculous. You're
I'm like, which wait,
yeah,
where the thumb on whether like the
yeah.
middle finger goes in the middle? No, the
Exactly.
index. Yeah.
So there's all this stuff where it's like you count to 4, you hold to 4, you switch all of that technical stuff. The cyclic sigh is the easiest form of breath work I've ever come across, and it's literally scientifically proven to be the most effective to reduce anxiety and stress. All it is for the listeners is a deep inhale through the nose all the way up, and then you sip in a bit more air at the top, and then through the mouth, you exhale. Now, that's it. And that's called the physiological sigh, doing it just once. But doing it repeatedly makes it the cyclic sigh, cyclic as in cycle. So for everyone listening and for you guys right now, we can do this together. And obviously, if you're running, that's going to be a little bit harder. If you're driving, you can breathe with us. Obviously, just don't close your eyes, but
don't
do
that.
Yeah.
I always love those meditation soundtracks where they're like, if you're driving or operating heavy machinery,
Yeah.
like, don't do this now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're going to,
He's like, I do breath work all the time. I have to give. I got the disclaimer on autopilot.
Hang on. I'll put it on cruise control.
Yeah.
Well, let's just do 2 right now. So just go ahead, sit up straight. You can keep your eyes open, whatever. And as you inhale through your nose now, let your belly expand and bring your breath all the way up. Sip in a bit more air once you get to the top. And the big sigh through the mouth, make a noise, let it go, drop the shoulders. There you go. And one more big, deep inhale, letting the belly expand, sipping in a bit more air at the top. And exhale through the mouth. Let it go.
It's funny. I did this, I think, on your breathwork session. I think you might have done something similar, and it really instantly changes things. Like it is crazy how effective it is.
So here's the ninja secret, and no one talks about this. So when you're in conversation with someone else and you're thinking about what you're going to say next, or you're in that heated conversation and you need the tools to regulate, now we do the ninja version of the cyclic sigh, which the ninja version is just imagine doing it subtle. So instead of a big inhale through the nose and letting the belly expand, just focus on your breath now and inhale all the way up and a slight inhale at the top. And then instead of exhaling through the mouth, exhale through the nose. So what I'd like the two of you to do, and for all of you listening, is over the next minute or two as I speak, just imagine you're in conversation with someone else. Notice how it would be weird to do a big inhale through the nose, letting the belly expand. Yeah, and exhale through the mouth. That would be weird, right? But if you can do a ninja subtle version of this, just focusing on inhaling up through the nose, a subtle inhale at the top, and a subtle exhale through the nose, notice how that starts to have your racing thoughts dissipate. Notice how you're starting to feel more calm. This literally, if you find a few times in your day to practice this, you're now retraining your nervous system to not breathe in a choppy manner that contributes to that sympathetic state. You're retraining your nervous system to be safe. This ninja secret can help so much.
That is wild. And I think that's like I don't know where I first heard versions of this, but like it is. Oh, I think it was when I was playing with what was that, heart math or something? One of the original
Yeah,
like
I got
heartbeat.
certified in that, and I think I broke my
Yeah.
my little transmitter that you clip on the ear.
When I was trying to get my heart rate under 50, and you could just sit there and it's like, all right, it'd be like 58, 59, whatever. And then all of a sudden you do like one of those and your heart rate goes up for a second. But then as soon as you breathe out and you kind of lean into that, it's like mine just goes thunk, 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 thunk. Like it just drops down. And you could do that a couple times. I'm like, this is crazy. It's like instantaneous. Like it, and it's just, it is incredible. We used to do that in jiu-jitsu too, you know, when you're fighting with somebody, you know, if it's getting a little bit out of control, just a quick like, you know, and in and out, like all of a sudden you're like, I'm back. Like, we're good, you know. And that we talked about it real quick, but I want to kind of talk about it more. That free thing that you do was really interesting because I do breath work to some degree every day. So like, I don't want to say I don't need it for sure, because that's not what I mean, but I guess I'm in a less acute state where some of the people that I saw on that thing looked like they were sort of like working through something, or like it was a really important part of their day. And I loved seeing that for you, but really for them that you have this free service that you just do. What is it? Once a week, I think it is.
Yeah, once a week. Yep.
Yeah. And it's just cool because these people like looked like they were getting a lot out of it, and you're not charging anything, which is very kind of you, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's called the Breath Club. Every Wednesday, I lead a 30-minute breathwork session. Basically, it's on Zoom, and the first few minutes are just connection. The last few minutes are just connection. So it comes out to be about 15, 20 minutes of actual breathing. And yeah, people keep coming back because, you know, it's many of them, it's a highlight of their week. They're just
Sure.
go, 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 go. And they have it marked in their calendar being like, this is my me time. This
Sure.
is my time to actually feel. And for a lot of us too, it's hard. Not only is it hard to have the discipline to do something on your own, but it's also hard to like just do it on your own. You like to be guided. And I'm pretty good with my discipline in terms of like doing pre-recordings. I used to go to the beach every morning and do breath work and meditation and not like have any recordings. Currently, I like the recordings. I like being guided. I like the music, the whole thing. And I think part of the appeal too to breathe, like continue to come back to the breath club for folks is the community aspect. They like to see and feel that they're not alone, because a lot of people that come, they're quote unquote busy professionals, and they don't have like the direct human access to slow down with other like-minded individuals. Because think about it, like you would probably have to go to a yoga class to get that, and that's going to be a
90 minutes.
Depending on depending on where you live, it could be 2 hours, right?
Sure.
If it's a 90-minute class with the commute, or even if it's an hour class, you know. So it's a big commitment versus just sitting in the comfort of your own home.
Sure.
A lot of people dial in from their car. So yeah, totally.
And you know, it's funny that, and then I start getting into like, rather than carrying around a pocket knife, I would want to carry around a hammer and a nail, and you know, like I think, you know, because if I'm going to do yoga, a 60-minute class doesn't check the box for me. Like it needs to be a 90-minute thing. I feel like I've got to really lean in and release. Like that's why I'm going to a yoga class. Like I'm not going to a yoga class for a quick relaxation. If I want to do that, then I'm going to go to like the breath club, or I'm going to do something that's not, you know what I mean? And I think it's like knowing yourself enough to know what you're using, why you're using it, and when to use something different. Right. And for me, but again, that's a discipline thing. That's an education thing. It's a practice. I don't like this. I love that. Like I'd love to do the shamanic thing again, but like get maybe a different flavor on it. But there's nobody here locally anyway that does anything like that I found to be not sort of laughable, right? Like if that makes sense. A couple of these people that do it are sort of, you know, not really sure how talented they are, right? They say the right words, but they don't feel like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and it's an energy exchange too. You know, there can be people that are amazing at what they do and whatever else, but for some reason you just feel their energy and you're like, this is just isn't for me. You know, a big part of it's just finding your person, you know, or your people.
Which is why in yoga class during COVID did not work for me at all. Like that, I need that group energy situation because it just didn't work. I was like, nope, I can't do yoga on Zoom. Does not go
Yeah.
down for me at all.
Same. Yeah.
So people, obviously you're not giving this away for forever. Like what are sort of like, I mean, do you have programs that you kind of get people into longer term things where they're learning more? I mean, I mean, it's great that you do the breath club thing, but like what, I mean, how do you, I don't know, monetize, or how do you make a living out of this? Like, right. Do you?
For sure. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I also had the breath school, which breath
Cool.
school is 3 times a week leading you through breathwork sessions. It also has an online course. And in the online course, it's basically, without doing a cert program or like giving you anything to say you're a breathwork facilitator, it's teaching you everything I know about breathwork in this online course. And there's a workbook as well for it with a bunch of journaling prompts and different lessons. So with Breath School, there's 3 breathwork sessions a week on Zoom, the online course, the workbook, and what else? A bank of pre-recorded exercises. So Breath School is kind of the new thing. And my vision for the next couple of years is to start a CERT program, to start.
You took the next question out of my mouth, actually.
Yeah.
Usually you like to find out what's next, and there you go.
Yeah, totally. So that's, but my big thing, in addition to that is keynote speeches and workshops and
spread the gospel.
I love being on stage. I love being with groups and not just teaching, but leading them through breathwork exercises, the whole thing. Like that's really what lights me up more than anything else. So just continuing to get out there and travel and connect with different people. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's funny. We've got a whole new programming thing coming out here for the show, and a lot of it involves, that sort of in-person thing, because I think what we're realizing too is it's like it feels good to be able to have people like you on the show have a great conversation like this, but it feels really good to show somebody how to do something that they didn't know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then watch what happens when they're like, holy shit, that was amazing. Like, that seems cool. So I love that that's where you're going with it. Cool, man. Well, listen, I would love to sort of, if you ever do like a really deep dive, like if you'd ever do like a holotropic, or not trademark, whatever, whatever the non-trademarked version of that is, I would definitely be interested in learning a little bit more about that, because that kind of intensity, I think, is what I find interesting about some of these things. I that's not like an ego thing. It just, for some reason, like those deeper full body takeover things just kind of hit me better than like the 15-minute
like an intensive. Yeah
right.
For sure. Yeah. And that's what I was saying earlier. Like, if you're someone that's the deep diver, right, and you want more of those and those big releases. So yeah, let's make it happen. I'll come out to you. We'll get aligned with a yoga studio or something. I mean, this is what I do, right? And
I know all of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. We'll make it happen.
Tom's an acupuncturist and works in the wellness world every day.
Tell us what you want to do, when you want to do it. We'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Cool.
This could be our first Irreverent Health sponsored event.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, because what you said earlier about doing like in-person podcasts, when I started Soul Seeker, my podcast back in 2019, I had like 4 podcasts before that. And I was like, I'm cutting them all off just to do this one. Mm-hmm. And my one rule was it had to be in person and it had to be outdoors. Then obviously within a year later, the lockdowns happened. I haven't gone back to doing them in person. But one of my dreams would be to go on a podcast tour and have like 50 to 100 guests. And then after doing the interview, leading the guests through whatever the modality is that the guest is, or the guest, leading the attendees through whatever the guest is all about,
Yeah, and we have an idea that sort of plays in the same circle, where we want to take our guests and do sort of a masterclass situation, because like, again, I think we have a great conversation, but it would be awesome to land some practicality to that afterwards, especially with things that are easy to do. Like we've had a couple EFT people on, a couple IFS people on, like these are things that you could dip your toe into with reasonably easy lift that can be done in person very quickly, very efficiently. And like, just to give somebody like a sense of what it is. Yoga Nidra is another one. We actually have, and that's another one of those Huberman Curiosities was his he doesn't take a nap, he does yoga nidra, and I was like, that's fascinating, and started looking.
But he calls it, he makes it super fancy. What does it say? Non-sleep deep rest or something like that.
Yeah. Well, you're not like a Stanford scientist guy with a blog and stuff if you don't use fancy words, I guess.
But,
right?
Does he even get to say fuck on his show?
No.
At least we.
Yeah, I know.
And we gotta meet people where they're at and know what's going to turn them off. Like that was a big lesson for me over the years, to use more accessible language. Because a lot of times it's just the language you use. There's one word that you can use, like yoga, for example. Someone's like, "Oh, that's dogmatic," or that's too woo, whatever.
Yeah, it's too out there. It's too hippy dippy. Yeah.
Well, and even stuff like, I mean, honestly, I love like, transient hypofrontality, right? Like we've heard that a lot in meditation and stuff over the years, right? Like, and so like, I understand that word, but it's a cool word, right? But like, it also means nothing to most people.
Yeah.
Like it's a completely irrelevant term.
Here's
right?
another Huberman one that I love: anterior mid-cingulate cortex. Like what is that?
Yeah,
right?
What the hell is that? Right.
That's the scientific term of what's happening in the brain when you quote unquote do hard things, and it's the part of the brain that grows when that helps with motivation and resilience. Like a lot of times we were like, oh yeah, do hard things, and it's like, oh yeah, we inherently know we feel better, that makes sense. But then when you hear like, oh, there's a term, you are kind of like, oh, that sounds big, and then you learn what it is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then you like start to be like, oh,
you really dressed that up, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so I'm in technology for 25 years, right? And then everyth's an acronym and everything's scary words and stuff. And most people just want to know if it's going to work. Like, will my website send me this contact form at the end? You don't have to talk about SMTP servers and blah, blah, blah. It's like a whole thing. Like, and I just realized for years, I'm like, people don't want to. It's fine for me to be curious about transient hypofrontality, but it's not really something I need to like bring into regular dinner conversation. You could just be like, yeah, it's tuning out, bro.
Well, it's funny. I just did a keynote a few weeks ago, and this woman walks up afterwards and she goes, I've heard about breathwork in the past. I've tried breathwork in the past, but thank you so much for bringing the science into it, because it never resonated. And with you talking about what's going on with the science, now I want to try this again. And I hear that all the time. I also work with a lot of first responders. Like the first responders, a lot of them are working with plant medicines, which is awesome. And still, whether they are working with plant medicines or not, a lot of them that I've come across, they want the science. Sure. So it just depends who we're talking to, We
had a first responder on our show who is opening a line of ketamine clinics because same exact thing. She's like, yeah, there's the science. And she dove into the science deep enough for us to have a great show, but she talked to us a little bit after. I mean, she's like super deep into it. But again, people who are in that specific range, that you can't fuck with them with big science words. They're in crisis mode, right? Like they need help.
Yeah,
like
they just need to down regulate before they can even hear you.
Yeah, they're not listening to your big fancy words. But Huberman, it's funny, he did a whole thing on cannabis one time, and I'm like into the cannabis world for a long time too. So I was curious, and he was talking about like your memories don't sort of solidify overnight when you smoke indica, and he went into the whole, amygdala and yada yada, and it was like, I was barely holding on to the science part of it, because I'm like, I know what he's saying, and I just wish there was like an easy button for this conversation.
A translator.
And I'm not like a dumb guy, but I was barely hanging on. Like I was like,
you're also not a neuroscientist.
Right. Right. Yeah. I was holding on by a skin of my teeth kind of thing, man. So, all right, Sam, where do we find you? Where do we send people? Let's get people to you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So my website's samkabert.com. That's K-A-B as in boy, E-R-T. And if you go to samkabert.com/club, there you can find more information about the Breath Club and join the Breath Club. And from there, all my different links and pre-recorded YouTube videos of breathwork exercises, social media, all the things are at samkabert.com.
All the things. Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly. Cool, man. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really like I said, it's an area of continued research in my world. So I do appreciate Lauren.
Yeah, this was fun, guys. Thanks again for having me. You do an amazing job. I was listening to a couple of the shows going into this. Saw you had a recent episode
nice
about breathwork too. Yeah, keep doing great work. And hey, we're on this path together, so alongside each other. And thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll have you back, Sam.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, guys. Appreciate you.
All right. Take care.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.